Welcome to Super Simple Security Principles, where you learn how to think, not just what to do. I'm Nick Jackson, here to learn along with you from my good buddy and master guardian, McConnie Mason. Woo! This is episode 92, Understanding Email Providers and Clients. Let's go. So, we need to understand email providers and clients, huh?
Yeah, a little bit, right?
Okay.
So and again, this is all preparation for the workshop, and stuff we'll talk about in the workshop. So one of the major things that we'll be doing in the workshop is potentially, anyway, switching people's email provider
Nice.
and or their email client. And I know that that's probably going to sound super scary, and email is a big part of our life, so I don't say that lightly, and we'll be talking about that more. But anyway, for today, what we want to set the stage is just, first of all, understanding what an email provider is versus what an email client is, because there's people a lot of times don't understand exactly what those two things are.
Yeah.
And also, just as important, probably even more importantly, most people have only ever used Gmail, honestly, or other free email providers. And because of that, they don't know that there are significant differences between email providers. They only have experience with one. And so I feel like it's important to talk about that a little bit and make sure, just kind of raise the flag of, look, there are differences, and differences that I feel like are not insignificant. Like they matter.
So they're noteworthy differences. These are noteworthy differences.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. I absolutely
Excellent.
believe so. Yeah. So first, what is an email provider? That's Google, Outlook, Yahoo, Apple. Those are the big ones, right? And obviously,
Yeah.
Google's email service is called Gmail, but Google is the company that provides it.
Yeah.
Microsoft provides email. They started out, I think the first one was Hotmail.
Okay.
They have Outlook. They have Live. They've branded their email things a lot different ways over the years.
Okay.
And then there's Yahoo, which is just Yahoo email or Yahoo Mail. Apple, they call it iCloud, or they had a .me. They've had a few different brands over the years as well. So those are the big ones, and again, obviously, all those are. I mean, there are paid versions for at least Google and Microsoft and even Apple, I think. But anyway, they all have some free level. And of course, then there's the other email providers that have a much, much, much smaller market share, but like Fastmail, my preferred email provider. And
Right.
there's Proton Mail that we've talked about, which is an up and coming encrypted email provider, which I trust. And then Tuta, which is another one that I feel good about as well. And then there's a handful of others, but those are the big ones. And what an email provider means is simply that they provide an email address and box for you to receive email at.
Gotcha.
So there's a computer living somewhere where people can send email to, and it sits on there until you use your email client to access that email. And that's what an email client is how you read, write, send your email, the interface that you use.
Okay.
And part of the reason why those two get confused in a lot of cases is because they are, in some cases, very closely connected. And in a lot of cases, the email client is simply your browser. So lots of people use Gmail by logging in their browser and going to gmail.com.
Yeah.
And so in that case, the email client is simply a browser.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it on your phone, then you're going to be using, in most cases, the Gmail app, or at least in a lot of cases. the Gmail app if you use Gmail.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, on iPhones at least, use the Apple Mail app.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the thing, though. With the Apple Mail app, you can check a Gmail account. You could check a Microsoft Outlook email account. You could check a Yahoo email account. You could check a Fastmail email account. So that's the difference. So if you have a Gmail account from Google as your email provider, you could use a whole bunch of different
Apple is the
apps.
client.
Yeah, exactly. You could use the Apple email client to check your email. You could also use Google. You could use them both if you wanted to for whatever reason.
Right.
As well
Probably
as
most
accessing
people
it.
do on occasions, like.
Yeah, exactly. At a minimum, you're probably going to do something on your phone and something else on your computer if you check
Exactly.
them from both places, which a lot of people do, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So not too crazy to understand, but important because the email client also impacts the behavior and the functionality.
Yeah, if you're going to use like Apple to interface with Google, there might be a little different. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly. There are. Gmail in particular has some weird things it does in terms of its email account, and they're so dominant that over the years, most email clients have coded in special things to handle the Gmail weirdness.
Yeah.
But in the early days, I still remember having, when I was using Gmail as my primary account, this was years ago now, of course, many years, but it was problematic because of the kind of the funky things they were doing. They're custom things. Yeah, I mean, that's long since been a problem. So, I mean, this is all, don't get me wrong, this is not a recent problem, but but the email client is limited also, or rather, I should say, what email provider you choose limits what email client you can to some degree. Because even though the Gmail problem has been solved, for example, like we mentioned previously, if you use Proton Mail, you need to use their client.
Okay, that makes
At
sense.
At least
be
as far
using
as I
like
know,
Apple
there's no other way. There's no way to work around it. Maybe you could turn on encryption. I'm not 100% about that. I could be wrong about that, so I'll just give that caveat. But that's at least it certain looked like to me.
Okay.
And I will say for Fastmail, for example, which I use, you can absolutely use it with any email client, but they do have, for mobile, they have an app, and the Fastmail app gives you a lot more functionality and all the Fastmail goodness in it that you don't get, say, if you use Apple Mail.
Gotcha. So that's why the clients are important.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
because it can do all the special stuff. It can have a lot of special stuff rather than just the things that is generic across all email providers, because Fastmail has a lot of extra cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so I use the Fastmail app on my phone, and I find it to be very good. On the desktop, I use, well, a browser as well as anyway, we'll talk about that more later, but they don't have a special client on the desktop, but they do for the phone.
Okay.
So, and with email clients, I looked at the statistics, and it's kind of funny, but it looks like Apple Mail is a really big one. Gmail is a big one. Outlook is one. It looks like, according to this, I didn't even know, but apparently Yahoo actually has an email client still.
Really?
Maybe. I don't know. That's what the one stat. I'm not. Well, don't quote me on that one. But anyway, all the rest are tiny percentages. So there's not a lot of diversity there apparently, but anyway, just to give an idea of what that looks like. So so the last thing I'll say, I think, is we're going to be talking about how to pick an email provider. And some of the reasons. Obviously, I pick Fastmail, and in a lot of ways that's what I'm going to be promoting primarily, because based on the 6 priorities we just outlined, I feel like Fastmail accomplishes those the best. That's the short version. But I do want to talk about my reasoning behind picking an email provider, the pros and cons. And so we'll probably do a couple episodes on that. And then I do want to do individual episodes on all the major email providers, because I don't want to just say, hey, I love Fastmail, take my word for it.
Right.
You know? And in the workshop, we'll see exactly what we cover, but I at least want to have this as background so I can give it to people as reference and talk about it and answer people's questions and just say, look, here's my specific issues with Gmail. Here's my specific issues with Outlook. Here's the things I like better about Fastmail, and get into those details, because, at the end of the day, it's going to be their choice, and it's a big choice. And even though I'm going to promote Fastmail for the most part, I have some aspirations too of maybe building some tools to even make it for people who decide to stick with Gmail, that to really supplement Gmail for what it has available.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
so we'll see how we get where we start. We got to start somewhere. So the focus is mostly going to be Fastmail to begin with, because that's what I know, that's what I've proven, that's what works great. But if people don't want that, we'll work on some other secondary solutions longer term as well. So
Perfect.
okay.
Perfect.
So what? That was kind of my wrap up takeaway. What about you?
I just learned a little something. For me, knowing that there's the email providers, so the Googles, the Yahoos, the Apple, etc., and knowing that there's clients, so some interfacing that you have with those email providers. And for me, that was a new takeaway. Like, wasn't aware of that, didn't realize that there would be some differences and things like that. So I like it. That said, we're going to cover a whole bunch of different email providers in the future, so stay tuned. I'm pumped about that, just to kind of see what features and what's available to us. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Great episode, dude.
Are you ready to take action and wondering where to start? Get my Bulletproof My Identity Starter Kit for free. The 7 most vital layers of protection everyone needs. I'll send you one step at a time and help you if you get stuck. Just go to bulletproofmyid.com and enter your name and email, and I will send you the first step. Again, that's bulletproofmyid.com.